collecting points for my certification. I've not very often been up here, so bear with me. I'm gonna take you on a bit of a journey here this morning. It's early, but I'm asking you to open your minds and listen to my story about how Super from Sweden came up with a new way to grow grass. Let's see if this thing works. It doesn't, maybe I'm not, there we go. I'm gonna start with this picture. This is a danger moment for me in my career, but a major moment. This is the North Korean Supreme Leader, Kim Jong-un, one of the most dangerous men on earth. And I'm actually one of the few people from West who has actually met him. And it was a Eureka moment for me in my career as a superintendent. And I'll get to that in a minute. My problems are and have been very much like anyone's problem in this industry. We have water problems, pests, leaching, environmental problems, problems from traffic. I started my career wanting to become the new Jack Nicklaus. That was my goal. I didn't think about turf at all. I thought about golf. This took me to 2 European Tour qualifications, and you can say that my playing partner in one of them, Jesper, did a little bit better with his golfing career than I did. But I had found my passion. My passion is golf. I love the game, and when I realized I could not make a living from playing it, I decided I could work with golf courses and manage turf. I'm a turf geek. I love golf courses and grass, and I went and built my first golf course with my father in 1986. I realized quickly that I needed to learn a lot more about how to do this, so I went to college in the US and I found my second home. And now I carry 2 passports, and my family and I spend about half a year in the US and Sweden. Why I want to mention this major moment, so this is a very important event in my career. I was invited to work at the British Open in 2005, and most people remember this as Tiger's second Open victory and sweeping the field with very nice golf game as always. For me, this was an event that etched something in my memory that I never forgot. And this was from working with one of the crew members one day. And the crew member took me out to an area near the 6th hole on St. Andrews. And he was digging in a trench there. And there was standing water. It was fixing some kind of pipe. There was some kind of irrigation issue. And I asked him, so what are we going to do with this water? We got to get the water out to work with the pipe. And he said, well, I'm just going to come back later and the water will be gone. I said, well, what does that water come? Is that groundwater? Yeah, that's groundwater. Well, if it's groundwater, it's not going to go away, right? No, he said, the tide changes here. This is very close to the ocean, and the tidal changes near the British Isles is very major. He said, we have about 20 feet of tidal change, so the groundwater goes up and down. All right? I never heard that. I had no idea. And I realized that the turf grass that we are growing on golf courses actually evolved near the coastlines and where the groundwater changes. So I thought, well, maybe that can be a good way to improve my sand-based putting greens. So I went back home and I worked with my golf courses. I built some 20 golf courses in my career and owned and managed 6 of them. And unfortunately, we put a bunker liner product in some of them at this time. And the bunker liner product started failing. So I got a real bad blow to my business, where the bunker liners failing caused us to have to replace a lot of bunkers, a lot of sand, and my company was going under fast. I had to sell off 5 of my golf courses, kept a 1 9-holer, but I had to also go back and tell my family that we had to put our house up for sale, and which made them devastated, of course. So it was a really very tough time for me, but it forced me to come up with a new material, and that material was capillary concrete before capillary material. It saved that last golf course, it saved many of my projects, and it actually, let's see, this thing is working so. I think it stopped working. There we go. Yeah. So it did save my company. It did actually save my family too, and we're still in that house. So we'll be celebrating our 32nd anniversary here in March, which is nice. I'm very grateful for my wife not leaving at this time. But the counter blow was, I had a lot of friends around the world, and they started to ask if they could use this in their bunkers, which was good, and I was willing to do it, and we started going around the world doing it, and today I worked in 43 different countries at over 1,000 golf courses around the world. I wanted to try to fix my sand-based turfs, and I wanted to do this, I wanted to do it in a way where I saw how capillary worked in bunkers. I thought, well, what if I can make it work in my root zones? What if I can replace the gravel layer with capillary and see if I can increase oxygen in the root zone? So this is 2014. This is a par 3 hole of my golf course, the one that we had left, Torrekulla in Gothenburg, Sweden. And we are putting down a plastic liner and capillary on a tee base. This turned out to save about 85% water on this tee. So it was very good from water saving, but we still had these problems with anaerobic conditions and deep in the root zone. You know the problems. So while I was traveling, these travels took me around the world about 80 times in the last 12 years with this body, mostly in economy class, which is physically straining it many times, but one of these trips took me to Singapore in 2018. It was June 12th, to be exact. And we had booked this some 6 months out, and it was a very, very prominent golf course in Singapore, the Singapore Island Country Club. My good friend Chris Gray, who's now with the European Tour, or DP Tour. The only problem was 1 month before I was going, we find out that President Donald Trump was going to meet with Kim Jong-un in Singapore on June 12th, same day. And I couldn't change anything because everybody had already booked everything. I tried to change. No, we can't change. It's not going to be a problem, they said. Don't worry about it. Okay? Well, when I get there, as it turns out, Kim Jong-un was staying in the hotel next to my hotel on the same street, and they shut down the whole street. And the day before the installation, I was meeting with the club. I was wearing a tie and suit, and I was walking home from the meeting because the cab had to leave. The cab had to leave me outside the hotel. So I walk past Kim Jong-un's hotel, just as an group of American diplomats are walking out of their cars into the hotel. And for some reason, I still don't remember, but you only get one chance to meet Kim Jong-un, right? So I said, okay, what the hell? I tagged along this group of American diplomats as the last guy. It was really stringent security. But they let me through. For some reason, they just thought I was one of the guys. So here I am in a lobby talking to North Korean and American diplomats. Pretty exciting. 10 minutes later, the elevator comes down and we have a group of North Korean bodyguards with Rocket Man in the middle. And he's walking, he starts to walk around the lobby and cheering and happy, and he's a real short guy with a funny haircut. And as he comes over to me, I think, you know, well, I'm going to say hello to him, but I'm also going to try to take a selfie. So I pull my camera out, my phone, and I say, you know, do you mind if we take a selfie? He said, yeah, okay. So I take a selfie. He walks out, and somebody grabs me from behind, pulls me into a room, puts me on a chair. It was the Singapore police, right? So I quickly realized that I was in a room, on a chair, arrested by the Singapore police because I had done something that you're not supposed to do. They saw I was not a diplomat when I pulled the phone out, because they don't do that. In this country, you can get jail time for chewing gum on the street. So these guys are not, you know, you want to be careful here. So this was a major moment for me, because as I'm sitting there, I'm looking straight across the lobby at the restaurant. And in the restaurant, there's a big glass cabinet with a Ferris wheel in the cabinet. And the Ferris wheel has these trays, set trays, that go up and down very slowly. But there's water in the bottom, and the roots are hanging out, and there's little shoots of salad or lettuce growing in these trays. So for 2 hours, I have this near-death experience. I'm very scared because they're going to do something to me. I don't know why. And I'm looking at this Ferris wheel, and I'm saying, I've got it. I now know how to build a hydroponic system for turf grass. Now, hydroponics is the best way to grow pretty much anything. Anything you buy in a shop, store, that's fresh. Most of it, anyway, is grown hydroponically. It's the best way from an economic standpoint. It's the best way from environmental standpoint. Why haven't we grown turf grass hydroponically so far? There are two problems why. The first problem is you need to have a very straight base, level base. You cannot let the root zone touch the water table at different times. So you gotta get the flatness of the base. And you can create that with my material Capillary, because it's 1,000 psi, it stays dead flat. The second thing is the mere volume. I mean, it's one thing growing salad in a little case, right? But when you're talking acres and acres of turf, you're talking volumes of water, fertilizer. It's not easy to build structures where you can move the water. I mean, on my tee there, I was playing around with tanks and pumping water from back and forth. Electricity is a problem. How do you get power for pumps? So these two problems have made it impossible so far. But I've solved these problems with this system. This is the Capillary Hydroponics system. And you have turf from the top down, you got grass layer growing in sand, coarse, open sand, no organics. Hydroponics means to grow in water, not in soil. Then you have the capillary material, 2 inches, and you got some drain lines and gravel, and then you have an impermeable liner. And deep down in the soil, or deep down, 3-4 feet down, you have geothermal piping. This means that we bring the water from one side to the other, right? The middle of this is supposed to, you see the liner, you see the water going from one side to the other. Before the water goes from the one side to the other, it goes through a pipe system underground, like a geothermal housing system where you heat the water. So I'm from Sweden. We're way up on the globe. very cold. We have huge problems with winter kill. We have huge problems with low temperature kill. Not so much in the summer, but you can also cool the root zone in the summertime with this. Turf grass gives off carbon dioxide in the root system. This is something I should have known, but I didn't think about it that way. But once the carbon dioxide levels reach 7% in the air-filled porosity of the root zone, the roots will not grow. So if you have a changing water table, pulls down oxygen, once the roots create carbon dioxide, it pushes it out. This is what we call a gas exchange. We have one hell of a gas exchange in this system. Now, there we go. Oh, too much. So here's the gas exchange, explain. The top one is the green, normal irrigation, 4 millimeters a day. You only displace 4 millimeters of water in the root zone. The bottom one is when you move the water table a lot, 6,000% more gas exchange. When we grow models like this, you see this is 3 weeks. You put a piece of turf on top of a coarse sand, no organics. Three weeks later, with this system, water going up and down with fertilizer in the water, you see all the roots at the bottom there. You might not see them, but there's an enormous amount of rooting going on here. We use an airlift pump in a basin to move the water from one side to the other. The airlift pump is basically a little narrow pipe stuck into a deep basin, and you introduce air bubbles at the bottom. And when they bubble up, they move the water, they pull the water with them over to the other side. So there are no mechanical pumps in the basin, which helps to eliminate any mechanical problems of rusting as such. Here's a case study from a city in Sweden where we've done a grass area in the middle here. Top left picture is what it looks like today. The lower left one is what they wanted to look in the future because they like this system. The right one is another animation of what it's going to look like in front of the central station in my hometown. You can build grass areas with rock and very open root zones that don't take compaction, where you can oxygenate the root zone very easily. Here's a tea in England, the Grove, outside London. This tea uses 15% of the water that the other teas use. 15%. And it plays better, because the surface is dry. So quiet. We're running a very interesting trial at MSU, the Hancock Turfgrass Research Center, with Dr. Tom Nicolai. We built 6 identical greens. 3 greens are the USGA variable root zone greens, and 3 greens are capillary hydroponic greens. This is to evaluate and do a proper scientific study of how this system works. The trials that we have built on different golf courses have shown tremendous water savings, and initial results from last year look very good, but we're waiting for the final results, or this is going to be a 3-year study, but next year we're going to get sharp, good reports of the results. So it's a very interesting project up there where Mike Rabe is the student handling this with Dr. Nicolai. Just a comparison between a perched water table system and the hydroponic system. We get a much drier surface. We can use much wider tolerance sands. We can use pretty much any open material as a root zone. You can specify the root zone for the user need, whether it's a playground or a sports field or golf course. We don't have any over irrigation except for when we apply products. So you still need the heads if you want to. but you don't have to. You can water from below. And the water consumption is very low, leaching is practically zero, and the carbon dioxide oxygen exchange is tremendous. So the Singapore police, they erased the pictures of Kim Jong-un. They did not put me in jail. They kept me for hours, but I made that installation the next day. And I kept, the only pictures they let me keep were the ones from the lobby of the bodyguards. But I still made it out alive. Here's a summary. If you take your camera and point it at that, this little funny looking picture in the middle, the QR code, you'll be able to download or see a technical e-book with all the details about the system. We're also in 912, booth 912, or the website. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Any change in ET rate with this system per se? Does it affect that at all?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. You're basically removing the T. Oh, you're not removing the T, you're basically removing the E. So, yes, the ET, which is evapotranspiration, right, is a combination of the plants transpiring water and the evaporation of water from the surface. Right? The less water you have in the surface, the less total ET you're going to get. Yes. One of the reasons why it saves so much water is also it stores rainwater in the system. We're going to have a model on the floor so you can see how it works. This model that I show with the 2 cylinders, we have that on the floor so you can see the water going back and forth. You'll get it when you see it. Any other questions?
Martin.
Yeah, lady here.
I was wondering how the system would affect root diseases. It's like different root rot that is like normally more of an issue when you have a lot of water in the root system.
Right. So you're just now opening the can of worms, right? This is the thing, okay? Because this is really, I'm just saying, this is our Fosbury flop moment. Like, we're going to jump that bar the other way, okay? It means you can start thinking about ways that we can improve different things in the turf industry. I'm not, you know, I work with Dr. Nikolai. I'm not that smart of a guy, but, you know, I figured out how to do it physically and the water and, you know, how to get the system on the ground. But once you start thinking about it, you realize that, oh my God, we can do this, we can add this to the water. You know, we add things to the water. The one thing I notice is whatever you add to the water, it lasts a lot longer because it doesn't leach, it doesn't disappear. And how the effect is going to be on root diseases is yet to be discovered, right? Some of these things we have to learn because there's no manual on this system. Nobody knows how this is going to react. Sorry. Yes?
What's your plan for, like, with greens with undulations, perch water tables, aligned?
Good question. That's one of the things that I forgot. I forgot a lot of things, okay, to say a lot of things here. But we, on the greens at Michigan State, and I'm missing the point at Michigan State, sorry, Dr. Nikolai, we're changing the surface 8 inches. So the shape of the green is done in the root zone material. So the root zone is from 8 inches to 16 inches. And the roots adapt to that much. If you want to go more than 8 inches, you have to build another basin. It's just another cell system. So you can add several basins and create a slope if you want, but you can only do 8 inches in one basin. All right. One more question, Dr. Nikolai.
Now, I want to add something to that.
Yes.
One, Martin and his company, his investors, spent around $400,000 US to build these greens. They're the first greens ever built that are replicated, that have undulations in them. They were built by Frontier Golf, who actually builds golf course greens. They were the architect, I was like drawing the slope of how I wanted it, and I thought, God, what an arrogant idiot. And I called Chris Ruzinski, who is a certified golf course architect. He put in slopes of 1.5%, 3%, and 5%, which he thought was perfect for pin settings for the golf courses he builds. And what we'll be looking at is a million things over time. And the great question about root diseases is the biggest problem is how do you get the fungicide exactly where you want it? One time, we'll just throw it in the basement. I mean, it's going to change science in the way we look at things so much. And it's a pleasure to be able to work on this kind of thing to end my career. Awesome. So thanks.
Thank you. Yes.
What is the lifespan of the product?
Sorry?
What is the lifespan? Has it got a...
Lifespan. So that's a great question too. The actual capillary material is pretty much indestructible for hundreds of years. But the profile and how this works, if there's any, I think it's going to be longer than a regular USJ green, but I'm not sure. So there's 10-year guarantee on the material. I'm sorry I've run over the time very much, but if there's any other questions, please look me up after. Thank you very much. Sorry.